Hi everyone, this is Katie from Moonflower Moments. So I am joining y'all after probably about 20 hours of grading in about 2 days. So my muggle job has kept me very busy and very tired. So hopefully I make sense. My brain is feeling a little bit fried. But today while I was grading, perhaps I was looking for a distraction or what, but I came across an idea that I thought that I would want to share with y'all here, and that is my first five, last five. So the concept of this video is that I walk you through my first five tarot decks and then my last five tarot decks, and this is going to be a part of my Dissecting My Tarot Practice series, in which I explain to you how my practice has shifted since the very beginnings of its origins and what it looks like now. So I thought it would be fun to do this. Maybe my brain, like I said, just needed a desperate break. But if you want to play along, I would be happy to see your responses. So we'll title it hashtag first five, last five. And if you want to include oracle decks in the mix, you're welcome to. I just chose tarot decks because within my first five I actually had 3 oracle, but they've seen a lot of airtime on my channel, so I thought I would mix it up a little bit and focus just on tarot. So with that being said, I'm going to get started with my very first one, which y'all already know because I talk about it all the time, and that's going to be Tarot Botanical. Now this deck was on sale. It's an indie deck. It was on sale on Etsy for like $28 yesterday. So I just wanted to let you know that if you're interested. This is my copy that I use to read for other people, and I have edged it in black so it won't come like that, but I think that the Tombow marker took to it really, really well, so I'm excited about that. So when I first got this deck, I was really starting to experience spirituality through nature. So I had read Wobbin Wall Chimera's, hopefully I'm saying her name right because she's one of my queens braiding sweetgrass. And in that book, Wobbin Wall Chimera really talks a lot about the way that nature is the truest form of spirituality. And she goes through Native American indigenous practices and beliefs and talks about the way that Native American tribal languages are dying, and so therefore we're losing access to some of the ideas that they had about nature. And I do find that this book, I'll leave it in the description box below, is a really powerful representation of my spiritual beliefs. And so shortly after reading that, I had come across a friend who was doing tarot readings. I think she was selling them like $15 for like a 3-card spread, and I purchased one from her. The reading was incredible, and I knew that I needed to get a tarot deck, and so I ended up buying Tarot Botanical. And this deck continues to amaze me. I definitely am someone who enjoys like pared back imagery, so this deck still is very vocal when it speaks to me, but I love that this deck doesn't shy away from some of the more untraditional forms of plant medicine. So for example, the mushrooms, let me see if I can find them. The mushrooms, I had to dig a little bit. There we go. The death card in this deck features psilocybin mushrooms, and I really just very much appreciate that because it definitely represents like the hallucinogenic journey being one where your ego dies and then you transform. So since that is in alignment with my personal beliefs, there are a lot of things in here that just replicate and seem to match the way that I see the world. So I would say that when I was first starting off reading, I wasn't scared of pairing what I knew about the world, which was a lot about plants, with the tarot, and I think that this is still pretty true to my practice now. So I love this deck so much. If you want to hear me really gush about it, you can check out my top 10 tarot decks video, and I'll leave a link in the description box below to that one because I definitely refer to this deck as my grandmother and that deck. And I'm gonna have to start flipping now because the High Priestess, my actual grandmother, her name was Rosa. So we're done. We're done. We will definitely keep that there. So I'm definitely someone that, like, when I go all into things, I really go all in. So I definitely read with tarot for probably about a week or two, and then I was like, okay, all of my reference books, namely Holistic Tarot, because I read that book top to bottom, you know, all the way through, and probably about 3 months of first starting tarot, it was referencing RWS. So of course I had to buy, you know, just a nice little cheap Centennial RWS. This is probably not shocking for anyone. I'm sure many people have this as one of their top 5. But I definitely chose this because at the time that I was starting to read tarot, everyone was talking about like borderless decks, and I was like, ooh, I want the borderless one because that just seems to be the thing. And so I was definitely influenced by the tarot tube to pick an RWS that was borderless for sure. But I remember my first few readings with this, I used to do massive like 12 card spreads, like 3-4 weeks into reading tarot. I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I do think that this deck doesn't get enough credit, because we get sick of kind of seeing the same imagery over and over again. And when we want to try like the nice new shiny things, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that when you're doing big spreads, especially because of the colors in the background, this deck just serves its purpose so well for helping you to really tap into that intuitive mind and be able to see connections between cards in the spreads. And you can tell it's like really well loved. I left this deck in my car one time, and so some of the edges started sticking together. My Emperor is a little bit beat up too, but we don't mind that. I got like a pencil mark right there. We don't mind that. So it's starting to fade a bit. I didn't use this for probably about 2 years after I started reading tarot. And then like quite recently, I've been reading for a lot of different clients, and I find that some of them just really prefer the traditional imagery. So it's still definitely one of my go-tos. And I'll talk about another RWS clone in a little bit because I don't have too many of them. So I think when everybody kind of comes into tarot, or at least this is the experience that I had, it is definitely a sector that is very well represented in terms of like the Celtic faith and also the Druidic faith. And so I think it was natural that probably I gravitated towards a little study of Judaism. So I had purchased this book, and it took me a little while to read it. I got probably about like halfway through, and then I quit for about a year because I needed some time to kind of soak in the information that was there. But I would definitely say, I think I have one of my bookmarks in here. Look, right there. That's one of my bookmarks. I would definitely say that this book describes most of my beliefs really, really well. So of course, when I picked up my Druidcraft Tarot, it just happened to make sense that I was also studying a Druid book at that time, or Druidry book at that time. Ooh, hopefully we can see, because these borders are super chunky. Someone recently just commented on my videos and they were like, don't be scared, you should chop the borders. And I'm like, nah, I am a sissy. I need to chop the borders, but I'm just a little bit too scared. But I have a friend that's really crafty, so I'm gonna consult her and see if we can get these chunky ass borders off of them. I love the Druidcraft Tarot. The only reason I don't read with it is because it is way too large for my teeny tiny hands. And quite frankly, I'm starting to get like trigger finger from like shuffling my cards. Like this finger hurts because I overhand shuffle. And so especially when I use larger decks, it starts to really hurt. So I'm trying to be mindful of that. And I don't know, like not shuffle humongous ass decks. So that all probably sounded very surface level, but I really appreciated the Druidcraft Tarot at the time that I was reading, because when I was first learning how to read, I was in Alabama, and Alabama is a very Pentacles heavy place. I think that the people that live there, or at least in the area that I was living, are people that are very grounded, and they do have a very deep appreciation for the earth. And so they like to take into account some of those grounded, more tangible things. And so I really appreciated it. A lot of times the sky in Alabama will look like the sky back here, which is like a little bit of clouds. You know, when you're up in the mountain air, there is that crisp sense of the mountain air, but oftentimes that gray bit of the sky. So it definitely matched the region that I was living in at the time of my life. I also think that this deck has an amazing beginner-friendly guidebook, so I would recommend this to any person who had just started reading tarot. So it makes sense that this was one of my first. Actually, as a matter of fact, I guess it was my third one, and I used to use it all the time. I'm waiting to figure out when this fits into my practice, because sometimes this feels very springish to me, and then other times it feels very fallish. I think that because I live in a place that is just so absolutely lush all the time, I have a difficult time trying to relate to the imagery now, because in Alabama it is, you know, calm and mostly barren like this. But I think Louisiana is just, it's a jungle. So I'm still waiting to figure out where that fits. But Druidcraft, it's not going anywhere. So that was number 3. And I think once you own like 3 tarot decks, like there's nothing stopping you. So I actually got these next to on the same day. So that would be my Greenwitch Tarot, and then my Goddess Tarot. And I did my interview spreads with these decks at the same time, but you know, for simplicity's sake, I will share the Greenwitch one first. So when I first got this deck, I'd been reading for maybe about a month and a half at that point, and I didn't understand what the heck the deck was trying to tell me. I just didn't. The imagery was just like a little bit too different from RWS for me to quote unquote get. I had a very difficult time understanding and relating and working with this deck. I think it probably took me about a year of very serious study before I circled back around to it. And now I'm so grateful that I have it, because Druidcraft used to be among my like top 10 favorite decks. Greenwitch has completely replaced that, because I would say that it's not a beginner deck. This is more of an intermediary kind of deck. So there are some cards in particular that I just think the perspective is just a little bit off with, and I really appreciate cards like this, like the Seven of Swords, where essentially this man is returning back from a hunt, and he has killed like these rabbits through this trap, and his wife is waiting for him. It looks like she's been waiting for quite some time. You can see her little spoon in her hand, like she's been waiting for him to come home so he could cook. And I just really love that, because it takes a card that is traditionally displayed as like a very negative kind of thievery point of view, and it does show thievery. Like he is stealing these rabbits from their home, but there's kind of like a real reason behind that. So when this card comes up, I definitely know to think for what is the deeper meaning, and why are people being mischievous in that kind of way, or kind of tricky in that kind of way. So, but I will say, like, this card, it threw me off so much. This card is the reason I didn't read with the deck for like a year. But you know, I think it's just natural. As we learn more about the tarot, we can start to see the tarot everywhere. And while this is mostly like an RWS clone, like look at this. This is totally RWS. I think the cards where the author took liberty to really switch the narrative, such as nature right here. You know, is this bear going to go in the background and dance with its fellow forest creatures, or is it going to fall for this trap that the hunter is laying? I think that's just a really cool idea. So I'm very grateful for this deck and the time that it came, because I think that this deck taught me that there was a world of difference between just like a standard RWS clone and other decks. I think this is the one that made me really appreciate, like, oh hey, I have to step up my game, because there's really cool things out here and I want to be able to read with them. The court cards also are the best court cards out of any deck that I own. I want to do a video where I talk about like decks that have the best court cards, because I feel like I just do a lot of thinking about the courts, and this, oh, it's so perfect. So that's Greenwitch. So I'm sure almost everyone has seen it, but I love that deck. That deck definitely made my top 10 list. And then we have right here, like I had already shown, the Goddess Tarot. The Goddess Tarot was one of my absolute favorite decks for a very, very long time. And I still appreciate this deck. I still love this deck. I still see that this deck has a lot of purpose. Since this really does cover goddesses, this deck gave me kind of like a foundational empowerment, I would say. I very much enjoyed the little white guidebook and how it would talk about all of these different all these different goddesses from all over the world. It kind of helped me to tap into that sisterhood and companionship when I was in a place where I didn't have a lot of friends, like a literal place when I was living in Alabama. And I'm grateful that I found this deck at that time. I used to do weekly readings, and I would use this deck every week for my weekly readings. And I will say that this is still where the deck shines. It really likes to be read in a divinatory sense. It wants to tell you the future. It wants to let you know when you're having a tower week that's coming up. I've pulled Tower quite a lot, and this deck has always been quite spot on with me on that. And I have certain stalker cards that are associated with this deck that every time I read, like the Princess of Wands will come up, and I'm like, what do you want to teach me? Like, I just keep seeing you. Like, why do you keep coming up? And so I think it's interesting. You know, part of that could be like there's something innately wrong with that card itself. Like perhaps like the card is like bent, or I don't know, I think a lot about it. Or it could be that I just have a very deep relationship with this deck, and I still have figures within the deck that are here to teach me something. This is my favorite Two of Pentacles of all time. The Two of Pentacles, I think, is my favorite major. of all time. I get it a lot and I relate to it a lot, and I just love the way that the water is meeting this beach. And like when water touches the sand, there is that like deep feeling of like I'm stuck in this kind of like muddy, sandy grit. But if I take one step back, I'll be able to flow with water that's behind me if I release that control. So I love it. And I think just from a true sense, I even like the borders on this deck. This deck is one of my oldies but goodies. I think I have a friend of mine that's like learning tarot, and I really thought about giving this to her because I don't read with it very much. But I think I'm just gonna buy her own copy because, you know, like I said, the minors are easy to read, but the majors offer you that sense of like goddess sisterhood that can really help you out through some difficult times and give you something to look forward to. This card also comes up a lot for me when I'm reading this deck. So that's Goddess. All right, guys, so I've been buying a lot more Oracle recently, but I'm going to keep to the purpose of this video and just show tarot. I'm sure I'll have a bit of a deck haul coming pretty soon. So I'll show my Oracle decks then. Now, if we are going with the last 5 decks, this is the first of the last 5. So this is my 5th most recent purchase, and it looks so good against this doily. I love the colors of this. So this is Little Bird by Shanna D. You know that I never miss an opportunity to talk about this deck. The cardstock is gorgeous. The guidebook is gorgeous. The birds are gorgeous. What does this deck say about me? Let me see. I think that this deck says that I am someone that really enjoys scientific illustrations of animals and also of plants. That is still very true to me. I have an insane collection of field guides, like 27 field guides, and then I have so many books that are specific to the regional plants that are in Louisiana. And so I think it makes natural sense, like in terms of my hobbies and my interest, why I knew that this deck was going to come along with me. But I'm a massive fan of garden metaphor reading. So you can tell from my very first deck, Terra, that one of the most important parts of my practice is looking at my natural environment and making comparisons between that and tarot. And so I think that no matter how many shifts and how many changes my practice has gone through, it is still like fundamentally at my core that I understand tarot through a nature lens. In a lot of ways now, since I've learned tarot, I understand nature from a tarot lens. I even did a little video on that a while back. It was one of my first videos that I ever did, and it's titled, I think, Tarot Field Trip, Palmetto Island. So I'll leave a link in the description box below to that one. But it makes sense. My practice is still very based in the birds, the critters, the natural things around me. So that was Little Bird by Shanna D. Next, I have another one of my recent favorites. I love gaudy, shiny gilding. I know people complain about this hurting their hands, and it does for me, but I love a gaudy gilding. So this is the Wild Radiance Tarot. I'm a massive fan of this deck. I bought this over the summer. I think it was probably at the end of July, and I still am very much reading with it. So I know that we are well into fall, but in Louisiana, fall weather doesn't really exist. We're still in the heat of summer. And so I love nothing more than to take this deck and go outside and sit in the flaming hot sun. I know that's crazy, but I definitely get like seasonal affective depressive disorder during the winter, so I try to hold off as long as possible from that. But I like to sit in the flaming heat and just read with this deck. But in terms of how I use this within my practice, I have recently started really thinking about my own creative voice, and I'll leave a link in the description box below to the different decks that I use to support me through this process. But I think that that's been a noticeable shift from my first 5 to my last 5. It seems like with my first 5 decks, I was really focused on kind of learning the basics, which is normal, but also interpreting tarot through a lens I understood, which was nature. I am now starting to open myself up to understanding it from other metaphors. And so I talk in my tarot creativity video about how I'm starting to use different decks for different parts of the brainstorming and creative process. And I just think that's a really unique way to use tarot that I never would have thought of when I first started. And so I'm opening myself up essentially to that life force, that warmth, that energy. And I think that vitality that can come through using tarot to support those practices. I love this deck. I like this Knight of Swords. I don't always understand this deck in terms of its imagery, but I always understand what it's trying to tell me. I hope that makes sense. All right, next is going to be my deck that I bought for no good reason other than the fact I wanted a September deck, and that's going to be my Sleepy Hollow Tarot. I did not need this deck, but I bought it because I had some free Amazon reward points, so like, why not? But I think that that's another dramatic shift in the way that my practice has changed. I, at the end of summer, realized that a lot of my summer decks could still technically count as fall decks because of the way that Louisiana weather works. But I did want to have something that really fit in with like the traditional alignment of September. And because this deck features a lot of like pumpkins and a lot of like spooky traditional New England kind of imagery, I felt like it was a beautiful September, October deck, just perfect for harvest time. So I think that there's a sense there of giving myself freedom to kind of play. I don't do very serious readings with this deck at all. It can give serious readings. I've done some like basic daily check-ins with it that have been a little bit deeper than what I anticipated, but I've been using this deck to play, and I think that that's totally fine and totally fun. And a lot of my decks that I started out with, my first 5 decks, were very study focused, and now I'm really just kind of in a point in my life where it's like, it's okay to own a deck just to play with it and to see what comes up. So that's been a bit of a dramatic shift for me too, because very possibly this might be the first deck that I've ever bought for no good reason other than the fact I wanted to have a play. I take that back. I do own the Neopets Tarot, and I tried to buy that deck for a play, but that deck is actually a very serious reader for me. So I guess this would be my second one, but it's not something that I do very often. And considering the fact I have like about 82 decks, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a noticeable outlier in the way I usually buy decks. I love this Hierophant a lot. I was grading earlier and I asked myself why I do it, and the Hierophant came out and I was like, oh, because I'm a teacher. Okay, great, awesome. So yeah, this is my September, October deck. All right, so next one is a pretty cool one. This one was a little bit indulgent. This is the Jupiter King. I bought the remastered edition by Tarot Collectibles. And when I say I bought, I mean my husband bought. He is so good. Y'all, he's so good about buying me an indie deck for like anniversaries and Christmases. So I love that, can't complain. But I bought this deck because I am so intensely attracted to the colors. I am not someone who reads with RWS a lot unless I'm reading for clients, but quite recently I have done a lot of client readings. There's a local vendor in my area who owns a metaphysical shop, and she does an excellent job networking with the community. Actually, as a matter of fact, I bought this little ring and then also this bracelet from her too. So I'll leave in the link in the description box below to her. But she's just a really beautiful person. And so she has been coordinating a lot of like community events where I can sign up and people can come and get tarot readings for me. And so she has about 10 to 12 different events per year with probably about 3 to 6 different tarot readers. And I've been using this deck when I've been going to those events to read for other people. I don't know why I have some cards that are upside down. Let me see, let me fix that. Okay, I think I got them. But I wanted something that was like a plain Jane RWS, but with like some spice, you know? And since I'm such a summer gal, I felt like these colors hit the nail on the top of the head. I love I'm gonna pull it out. I have it right here. Secrets of the Mystic Grove Oracle. Here we go. Let me show you what they look like together. And let's see, here we go. This is also one of my most recent decks, but I'm obsessed with how these two decks look together. I mean, just such an absolute massive fan. So these are two decks that have not left my reading table since I purchased them. And it's like crazy to think that I'm like casually reading with an RWS because I never thought that I would do that. And then the Jupiter King came into my life, and it matches all of these like late summer decks very, very well. And so it's been here to stay. So I'm very happy with Jupiter King. I'm so thankful my husband purchased this for me, because I do find that clients that I read for like appreciate seeing the usual imagery, but they do comment often on the bright colors. So this was Secrets of the Mystic Garden with my Jupiter King Tarot. All right, now we're on to my last one, which is a dramatic difference in my practice. So I have really been doing a lot of unearthing of the inner child, I would say. So the Inner Child Tarot has come into my life at a beautiful, wonderful time. So this deck features a lot of fairy tales. So I really appreciate that nod to that sense of childhood. You can see here that all of the majors are named after a particular fairy tale. But quite recently in my life, I have done a lot of work over the last 2 years, but especially in the last couple of months, kind of unearthing some places of trauma and unlearning the conditioning that I've experienced. And so I think that we all as adults have things that we do as adults that came from the direct actions of people in our childhood. And I've always recognized that I do things in a certain way, and the way that I form attachments with people is done in a certain way because of those around me. And I've always had that self-awareness, but I've never quite been able to get over that, or rather work towards healing that. And I think right now I'm in a safe enough place in my life, a stable enough place in my life, to where I'm not only able to just acknowledge what has gone wrong and try to work to overcome that, but I'm also in a place where I can go back to discovering who that inner child is. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, to sit with yourself and ask yourself, who am I without anyone else's influence? Who am I when I strip back all of the layers and I sit with myself and it's only me and there's no one else? Who am I with that? I pulled this card the other day and I just absolutely love it for a Four of Wands, because my husband and I just put in a massive garden bed, native plants. It's going to face the street. It's going to be beautiful and gorgeous. And so I think for Four of Wands, like 4 people coming together to build a garden, really does suggest that they are accomplished enough in life to where they can nurture the land. They don't have to move anymore. They're able to build that relationship. And so this Four of Wands is the best depiction of a Four of Wands I have ever seen. It's completely transformed the way I see my card. But this deck has the ability to hit in ways that it hurts. This is kind of like the Neopets Tarot in that kind of way. I thought it was going to be a deck that I could just have like a nice little play with, but this is a deck that is so sensitive. And I think part of it is that the artwork is very evocative. The colors sort of kind of bleed together, but the botanicals are really intentional in this deck as well. And so almost every single card has some sort of botanical feature, or at least ones that I notice, that make it really relevant. Like, I love this. This guy is like looking out here. And look, I think that's like a bat. I don't know. So it helps me to tap into that childhood imagination. So I will say that right now in my practice, this deck is where I'm at. Along with perhaps the Radiant Wilds that I use for creativity. I've been doing a lot of work with that inner child, and not just saying, oh, hey, you're here, but actually acknowledging her and trying to give her that voice that I think we all deserve. Matter of fact, I pulled a card the other day from this deck. Let me see if I can find it. Of course, it was the first card that I showed. Peter Pan for number 7. Excellent. We love a chariot. I'm a Cancer, so the chariot card tends to mean a lot to me. But I think it's really cool because the chariot is the first time we see someone acting without the influence of other mentors in the Fool's Journey. So when I think of it, I think of someone who is young, who is inexperienced, but is ready to kind of take on the world like Peter Pan. You know, he doesn't have any mentors that are influencing him, just like the person in the chariot doesn't have any mentors to influence him. He's here and he's exploring the world and he's taking on new things, but he's doing it by himself, for better or for worse. And so when I pulled this card as a representation of our relationship together, it really did remind me that I'm in that space in my life right now where I'm trying to strip away the layers of other people and get down to that core, just kind of like Peter Pan. Who am I without any guidance, without any mentorship? But it also very much touches my heart that this deck has a suit of wands and all of the wands are butterflies. So if you know anything about me, I am such a magnificent butterfly lover. I love a butterfly. If you're on my Instagram, you probably see a butterfly from me like 3 times a week if you're on my stories. So, I mean, I can't ask for a better deck to support me at this time. The guidebook is huge. Guys, these cards are huge. These are way bigger than Druidcraft. But that's okay. Maybe cards are meant to be huge because, guys, sometimes we don't need to pull 40 million cards. I'm speaking to me. I am, guys. I always pull like 40 million cards. Sometimes we just need to pull one and listen to what it has to say. So this was it. This was my first 5 and my last 5. So essentially, I hope that I can convey through this a little bit about how my practice has shifted as I've come to love and learn and study tarot. So if you choose to join me, it'll be hashtag first 5, last 5, and I really hope that I can see some of y'all's responses. So I hope that y'all have a beautiful day, and once again, thank you so much for the support that you give my channel. Y'all are the reason I'm here. So thanks.